I read my own handwriting confessing to a crime I didn't commit. That's the sentence I can't unsee. It was 2:14 a.m., the kind of hour where even the refrigerator hum feels too loud. I had my laptop open on the dining table, the blue light washing over my hands like I was under an interrogation lamp. Outside, rain tapped the window in uneven bursts, and inside, my coffee had gone cold, bitter, stale, forgotten. I'd clicked a link a stranger sent me with no greeting, no context, just a short message. Is this you? At first, I thought it was a scam. Those pop-up sites that sell vintage journals and pretend it's something rare. But then the photos loaded. A worn, maroon diary with a cracked spine. A gold lock that used to be more shiny back when I was 15 and thought secrets could be protected by cheap metal. A smudge on the bottom corner where I dropped it once on my bedroom carpet and tried to wipe the stain off with a wet washcloth. I leaned closer to the screen, my chest tightening in small, sharp increments, like each breath was being measured. That diary had been mine, and it had been missing for 20 years. I scrolled. More images. Pages photographed carefully, like evidence. The seller's caption said, "Found in an old storage unit." Authentic. Includes original entries and added chapters discovered loose between pages. Added chapters, I whispered, and the words tasted wrong. Then I saw it. A page titled in thick black ink, "The Night It Happened." The handwriting looked like mine, close enough to fool anyone who didn't know the tiny differences. Close enough to fool a jury. But what it described, that was something else. A confession. A local unsolved crime from my hometown, one that had haunted the community like a bruise that never healed. A young woman, found near the river trail. A case that had been whispered about at school, at church, in grocery store aisles. A crime I remembered because my mother had locked the doors earlier that week and told me not to walk alone anymore, as if fear could be kept out with deadbolts and prayers. My fingers shook as I read, line by line, while the rain kept time against the glass. I did it because she deserved it. I put my hand over my mouth, not to stop myself from screaming, because I couldn't even find my voice. I was too stunned for that. It felt like my throat had been packed with cotton. I stared at the screen until my eyes watered. Then I scrolled again, hoping it would vanish, hoping the page would blur into something harmless. But it didn't. It stayed there. My name wasn't on it, but my past was. And in that moment, I realized something colder than fear. Someone didn't just find my diary. Someone had been waiting for it to surface. 2 days earlier, my life had been ordinary. Not perfect, life never is, but steady enough that I knew what each day would look like. I'm 42 now, a mother, a wife, a woman who has learned how to keep the plates spinning without letting anyone see her hands trembling underneath. I work as an office manager at a small medical billing company. It's the kind of job where you memorize people's coffee orders and the sound of the printer jamming becomes as familiar as your own heartbeat. I leave the house around 8:10 every morning after packing my son Caleb's lunch and reminding him again to put his hoodie on because the mornings have been colder lately. My husband, Mark, is the type who wakes up slow. He'll stand by the counter in his socks, staring at the toaster like he's negotiating with it. He kisses my cheek every day before I leave. Always the same, always gentle. A small thing, but I've learned small things are what build a marriage that lasts. Our home smells like laundry detergent and lemon dish soap and the faint warmth of bread when Mark remembers to toast it instead of burning it. On weekends, we argue about trivial things, where the remote went, who forgot to buy milk, and then we make up without even calling it that. That's what normal looks like at 42. The only shadow in my life, the one thing that never softened with time, was my family. Specifically, my sister, Lydia. We hadn't spoken in years, not in any real way. We'd exchanged stiff holiday texts, Merry Christmas, like strangers who happened to share blood. The distance between us wasn't one dramatic explosion. It was erosion. A slow, painful wearing down of trust until there was nothing left but a jagged edge. And then there was our mother's estate. Mom's health had been declining, and even though she was still alive, the topic hovered around us like a storm cloud that everyone pretends not to see. Mom had a small house, some savings, a few pieces of jewelry with more sentimental value than monetary. But Lydia had always treated inheritance like it was a finish line. And me? I didn't want a prize. I wanted peace. I lived 3 hours away now. Mom lived back home, and Lydia lived only 15 minutes from her. Lydia had positioned herself as the dutiful daughter, the caretaker, the one who handled things. That's how she told it anyway. A week before the diary link arrived, Mom had called me with a tired voice. "Your sister's been restless," she said. "Restless how?" I asked, holding my phone between shoulder and ear while I folded Caleb's socks. Mom exhaled slowly. "She keeps asking about my will." I stopped folding. "Are you okay, Mama?" "I'm fine," she said, but her fine sounded thin. "I just don't like the way Lydia looks at my things. Like they already belong to her." I didn't say what I wanted to say, that Lydia always looked at life that way. Like everything was hers if she could reach it first. Instead, I asked, "Has she said anything about me?" A pause. The kind that tells you everything. "She thinks you're going to come back and take everything," Mom said softly. "She says you left, and now you want to return like a hero." I felt heat rise in my chest. Not anger exactly, more like hurt that had been reheated for the 1000th time. "I didn't leave to abandon anyone," I said. "I left because I needed to breathe." Mom didn't argue. She never did when it came to us. She'd spent our whole childhood trying to keep the peace between two daughters who shared a roof but not a heart. After that call, I had that familiar heaviness settle into my stomach. The sense that something was stirring in Lydia again. Something sharp. Still, I didn't expect my past to be weaponized. Because the truth is, that diary wasn't just a notebook. It was the one place I used to put the things I couldn't say out loud. Back when I was a teenager, my family house always smelled like cigarette smoke and strong coffee. Mom worked long hours. Our father wasn't around much, and when he was unpredictable. Lydia was older than me by 2 years, and she carried herself like she'd already decided the world owed her an apology. I was the quieter one. The one who watched. The one who learned early that staying small sometimes kept you safe. So I wrote. I wrote about school and loneliness and how Lydia could smile sweetly in front of Mom and then turn around and spit venom at me when no one was looking. I wrote about my first crush. I wrote about the night I heard sirens near the river trail and how my stomach sank before I even knew why. And then, one summer, the diary disappeared. I blamed myself. Thought maybe I'd misplaced it. Thought maybe I'd thrown it out in a cleaning frenzy. But deep down, a part of me always wondered if Lydia had taken it. She had a habit of taking things not because she wanted them, but because she didn't want me to have them. For 20 years, it stayed lost. Until now. And in the span of one rain-soaked night, my life started to tilt. Because if that diary was online, it meant someone wanted other people to see it. And the added pages weren't just gossip. They were a trap. The next morning, I barely remember driving to work. The roads were damp, and the sky hung low and gray. I kept the radio off because every voice sounded too loud. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. At my desk, I tried to act normal. I answered emails. I scheduled appointments. I smiled when my coworker Sandy told me her cat had knocked over a plant again. But inside, my mind kept circling the same question like a vulture. Who would do this? And the answer came too easily. Lydia. The thought made my stomach twist, but it also fit like a key in a lock. Because Lydia had never needed proof to accuse me of something. She only needed an opportunity. And if she could make me look unstable, criminal, dangerous, then she could convince everyone, including our mother, that I wasn't fit to inherit anything. Maybe not even fit to be believed. At lunchtime, I sat in my car with my phone and pulled the listing back up. My hands were steadier now, not because I was calm, but because something in me had hardened. A survival instinct. I screenshotted everything. The images. The seller's username. The price. The shipping details. The date posted. Then I typed a message to the seller. This diary belongs to me. It was stolen years ago. I need you to take this down immediately. I stared at the screen before pressing send. My heart beat slow and heavy, like it was warning me, once you start this, you can't unsee what comes next. I pressed send anyway. Because the truth is, I had spent too many years swallowing things to keep the peace. And I was done. The seller replied faster than I expected. It came through while I was still sitting in my car, the heater blowing lukewarm air that smelled faintly like dust. My phone buzzed against the cup holder, and my stomach clenched the moment I saw the notification. Hi. I didn't steal anything. I bought a storage unit at auction. This was inside a box with old clothes and photos. I can't just take it down because you say so. If you want it removed, prove it's yours. Prove it's yours. I stared at that line until the words began to blur. It felt like being 15 again, standing in our hallway with Lydia's mascara-streaked face inches from mine, daring me to defend myself when I didn't have the language yet. My proof, of course, was locked inside the diary itself. The pages had my handwriting, my secrets, my childhood fingerprints. But I couldn't reach into the internet and pull it back. So I did the only thing I could think to do in that moment. I called my mother. She answered on the fourth ring, breathless like she'd been rushing from one room to another. In the background, I could hear the television murmuring and the faint clatter of dishes. "Hello," she said. "Mama," I whispered, and my voice cracked in a way that surprised me. "I need to ask you something." Her tone shifted immediately. Mothers have a way of hearing danger even through a phone line. "What is it, baby?" I swallowed. "Do you remember my diary? The maroon one with the little gold lock." A pause. "Yes," she said slowly. "I remember." "Do you remember when it went missing?" Another pause, longer this time, and in that silence I heard something else, hesitation, the kind that comes when someone is deciding whether to tell the truth or protect the fragile peace. "Mama," I pressed, my fingers curling around the phone. "Please." She exhaled softly. "It was the summer after 10th grade," she said. "You were so upset. You searched your room for days." "And?" My heart thumped like it was trying to climb out of my chest. "And Lydia said," Mom's voice went quiet. "Lydia said she didn't know anything about it." I closed my eyes. That answer was both expected and devastating. "Did you believe her?" Mom didn't answer right away. I pictured her standing in her kitchen with her hand on the counter, her shoulders rounded the way they'd been lately. "I wanted to believe her," she finally said. "Because the alternative, it would have meant that she stole it," I finished, my voice flat. Mom didn't deny it. I opened my eyes and stared at my steering wheel, the worn leather under my thumb. "Mama," I said, "it's online." "What?" she breathed. "My diary. Someone is selling it online. And there are pages in it I never wrote. Pages confessing to that river trail crime from back then." The words sounded unreal coming out of my mouth, like I was reading a summary of someone else's nightmare. Mom made a small, sharp sound. "Oh Lord. I need to know something," I said, and this time I didn't soften my tone. "Has Lydia been talking about me? About me being unstable? Or dangerous?" Mom's silence was answer enough. "Mama. She's been saying things," Mom admitted, almost reluctantly. "She says you were always emotional. That you had mood swings as a teenager. That you used to write dark things in that diary." I laughed once, bitter and humorless. "Dark things?" "I wrote about being lonely. About you and Dad fighting. About Lydia making my life miserable." Mom's voice trembled. "I know, baby. I know." A noise in the background, footsteps, maybe, or a door closing. Then Mom said, too quickly, "I have to call you back." My spine went rigid. "Why?" "She's here," Mom whispered. My throat went dry. "Lydia's there?" "Yes," Mom said, and I could hear fear in her voice now, the fear of a woman who just wants quiet in her home. She came by with groceries. Groceries. That was Lydia's favorite disguise, helpful daughter, dutiful caretaker. A bag of oranges in one hand while the other hand held a knife behind her back. "Mama," I said, lowering my voice, "don't tell her I called. Don't tell her what I said." Mom didn't answer, but I heard her swallow. "Okay," she whispered. The call ended, and I sat there in my car, staring at my phone like it was a ticking bomb. Because Lydia was closer to my mother than I was. And if the diary had resurfaced now, right when inheritance talk had been building, then this wasn't random. It was timing. It was strategy. It was Lydia doing what Lydia always did, trying to control the narrative before anyone else could. That night, after dinner, I told Mark. We were in the kitchen washing dishes. Caleb was upstairs in his room, headphones on, the muffled sound of video game music leaking through the floor. The house smelled like garlic from the pasta we'd eaten, and Mark's hands were submerged in warm, soapy water. "I need to show you something," I said, and my voice sounded calmer than I felt. Mark turned, drying his hands on a towel. "What's going on?" I opened my laptop and pulled up the listing. The images loaded again, and my skin prickled with the same sick feeling as before. I watched Mark's face change as he scrolled, confusion first, then disbelief, then a kind of tight anger that rarely surfaced in him. "That's your diary?" he asked. "Yes." "And those pages?" He stopped at the confession page. His eyebrows drew together. "This is insane." "It's not my handwriting," I said quickly. "Or it's close, but not mine. I never wrote this." Mark looked at me, really looked at me, like he was searching for any hint of uncertainty. "I believe you," he said simply. Those 2 words hit me harder than I expected. My eyes stung, and I blinked quickly, refusing to cry in front of the open dishwasher. "It's Lydia," I said. The name came out like something sour. Mark's jaw tightened. "Your sister. She stole it back then. I'm almost sure. And now she's trying to frame me. For that old case." Mark sat down slowly at the table, like his legs had lost strength. "Why would she do something like that?" I stared at the screen, at the maroon cover that used to sit under my pillow like a secret friend. Because Mom's estate is involved. Because if I look unstable or criminal, Lydia can tell everyone I shouldn't get anything. Or that Mom shouldn't trust me. Or, my voice dropped. Or that I should be kept away from her. Mark rubbed his forehead. "Okay," he said, breathing out. "Okay, we need to be smart about this." "Smart how?" I asked. He looked at me with steady eyes. "We document everything. We get ahead of it. We talk to a lawyer." The word lawyer made my stomach flutter, but it also brought relief. Something concrete. Something real. Mark leaned in, tapping the screen. "First, can you buy it?" "Before someone else does." "I thought about that," I said. "But if I buy it, it's like admitting it's mine. And if Lydia planned this, she might want me to panic and do something that can be twisted." Mark nodded slowly. "Then we need to contact the platform. Report it as stolen property." "I already messaged the seller," I said. "He wants proof." Mark sighed through his nose. "We can prove it. We'll find old photos. Anything that shows you had it." I opened my mouth to answer, but my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. No greeting. Just a single line. "You should have stayed gone." My blood went cold so fast it felt like the temperature in the room dropped. Mark saw my face. "What?" he asked sharply. I handed him the phone, my fingers trembling. He read it once, then again. His eyes flicked up to mine, dark and serious. "That's Lydia," he said. I didn't even have the energy to deny it. Because deep down, I already knew. This wasn't just about a diary. This was about erasing me. I didn't reply to the message. I stared at it for a long time, though. Long enough for the screen to dim and my reflection to appear faintly over the words. "You should have stayed gone." It sounded like something Lydia would have said when we were teenagers, standing in the doorway of our shared bedroom, her arms crossed like she owned the air I breathed. Mark wanted to respond. I could see it in the way his jaw worked, in the way his thumb hovered near the keyboard. "Don't," I said quietly. He looked at me. "She's threatening you." "No," I said, surprising myself with how certain I sounded. "She's baiting me." I turned the phone face down on the table like it was something alive. If I answer her, she gets what she wants. Proof that I'm scared. Or angry. Or unstable. Mark nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "Then we do this your way. Calm. Careful." That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the house settle, the tick of the cooling pipes, the distant hum of the refrigerator, the soft rhythm of Mark's breathing beside me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the diary pages again. Saw my name being silently stitched to a crime I didn't commit. Sometime after midnight, I got up and went to the closet. There's a box on the top shelf that I rarely touch. It's labeled old papers, written in my handwriting from a time when I still labeled things carefully, afraid of losing myself. I pulled it down, dust puffing into the air, and carried it to the bed. Inside were fragments of my past, report cards, birthday cards, folded notes from friends I don't talk to anymore. And then, at the bottom, something I hadn't thought about in years. A photograph. It was taken in my childhood bedroom. I was sitting cross-legged on the floor, my hair pulled back with a scrunchie, my back against the bed. And there it was, clear as day in my lap. The maroon diary. The gold lock caught the light in the photo, a tiny glint of proof. My throat tightened. I pressed the photo to my chest for a moment, breathing in the faint smell of old paper and dust. Then I set it down carefully, like evidence. I wasn't done yet. Over the next 2 days, I became methodical in a way I'd never been before. I took time off work, telling my boss I had a family emergency. That wasn't a lie, just not the kind people usually imagine. I went through old emails, old boxes, old hard drives. I found a scanned page from a high school English project where I'd quoted my own diary, my handwriting unmistakable, dated innocent. I found a letter I'd written to a friend, referencing an argument with Lydia about her reading my private journal. Each piece on its own might have seemed small. Together, they formed a picture, a timeline, and timelines matter. I sent everything to the seller. The photo, the scan project, a calm, carefully worded message explaining that the diary was stolen property, that pages had been altered, and that selling it could involve legal consequences. He didn't reply right away. In the meantime, something else started happening. A coworker stopped by my desk with a concerned look. "Hey," she said gently, "can I ask you something kind of awkward?" My stomach dropped. "Sure." She hesitated. Someone shared a link in a local Facebook group about an old diary and a confession. My hands went cold. "And?" She shifted her weight. I didn't click it. The name sounded familiar. "Your name." I forced myself to breathe. "Thank you for telling me." That night, Mark found another post. This one on a true crime forum. Someone had reposted screenshots of the diary pages, speculating about the author's mental state and whether police had ever followed up. The thing about rumors is that they don't need proof. They just need repetition. I realized then that Lydia hadn't just planted evidence once. She'd been laying groundwork for years. I remembered comments she'd made casually, how I'd been dramatic as a teen, how I'd imagined things, how I'd rewritten history when I talked about our childhood. At the time, I'd brushed it off as bitterness. Now I saw it for what it was. Preparation. 3 days after the diary listing went live, my mother called me again. Her voice was tight, controlled. "Your sister says you're harassing someone online," she said. I closed my eyes. She says you're trying to take down something that proves you're not. "Well," Mom said carefully. "Not well," I repeated softly. "She's worried," Mom continued. "She thinks you're spiraling." I felt something crack in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "Mama, has Lydia shown you the diary?" "Yes," Mom admitted. She brought printouts. She said she was trying to protect me. "Protect you from what?" "From me," she didn't say. She didn't have to. "Mama," I said, "I need you to listen to me. I did not write those pages. And Lydia has had access to my things before. She stole that diary when we were teenagers." "That's a serious accusation," Mom said, but there was no conviction in it. "I know," I said. "That's why I have proof." Silence stretched between us. "I'm coming this weekend," I added. "I want to show you everything. In person." Mom hesitated. "Your sister won't like that." "I know," I said. "But this isn't about what Lydia likes." Another pause. Then, quietly, "Okay." I arrived at my mother's house on Saturday morning. The place looked the same, white siding, flower pots by the door, but something in the air felt off. Tense. Like a house holding its breath. Lydia's car was already in the driveway. Of course it was. Inside, the smell of coffee hung heavy. Lydia sat at the table, her posture relaxed, her smile practiced. She looked at me like I was a guest she hadn't invited, but felt obligated to entertain. "Well," she said, Look who decided to come back. I met her gaze calmly. We need to talk. She tilted her head. About what? Your little episode. Mom stood near the counter, hands clasped tightly together. I set my folder down on the table. Slowly, deliberately. About the diary, I said. And the lies you added to it. Lydia laughed softly. You always did have a flair for drama. I opened the folder and slid the photograph across the table. Lydia's smile faltered, just for a second. This is proof, I said. That diary was mine. And I have more. Her eyes flicked to Mom, then back to me. You're really going to do this? She asked quietly. Yes, I said. I am. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of her anger. I was ready for the truth. Lydia leaned back in her chair like she was bored. That was always her move, distance herself from the moment, act amused, act untouched. It was the same posture she used when we were younger and Mom would scold her for something she knew she'd gotten away with. Arms loose, chin tilted, smile thin enough to cut. You're embarrassing yourself, she said, dragging old junk out like it means something. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't rush. I simply opened the folder and placed another page on the table. A photocopy of my 10th grade English project. My handwriting dated. The line where I'd written, I keep my diary hidden because my sister reads my things. Mom leaned forward, squinting. What's this? An assignment, I said. From before the diary disappeared. Lydia's foot began tapping under the table. It was a small thing, but I noticed. I'd always noticed her tells. This doesn't prove anything, Lydia said quickly. Teenagers exaggerate. I slid another item forward. An email printout from 20 years ago, one I'd sent to a friend after the diary went missing. I think Lydia took it. I feel sick about it. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. That email, Mom whispered. You showed me this once. I did, I said. You told me not to accuse her without proof. Lydia laughed again, but it sounded brittle. So what? You wrote mean things about me when you were 15. Congratulations. I turned to face her fully. Why did the diary resurface now? She blinked. What? Why now? I repeated. Why not 10 years ago? Why not when I moved away? Why now right when Mom's will is being discussed? Her eyes darkened. You're paranoid. Then explain the added pages, I said. Explain why they describe a crime that happened weeks after the last entry I actually wrote. Mom looked between us, confusion giving way to unease. Lydia, did you add pages to that diary? Lydia stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. But I was already opening another document. These, I said, spreading out printed screenshots, are metadata comparisons. Handwriting analysis isn't perfect, but pressure patterns are hard to fake. The added pages press harder on the page. Different rhythm. Different slant. Lydia's jaw tightened. You want to know all this trouble? I had to, I said. You weren't just lying about me. You were trying to make me dangerous. Mom's voice shook. Lydia, tell me the truth. For a moment, I thought Lydia might cry. Her face twisted not with guilt, but with frustration, like a plan unraveling too slowly for her liking. You always get her sympathy, Lydia snapped, turning on me. You always did. Quiet little victim. That's enough, Mom said sharply. Lydia turned back to her. You don't see it, do you? She left. She abandoned us. And now she comes back, acting like she deserves the same as me. Mom straightened. That diary, did you take it? Silence. Then Lydia said, very softly, I protected this family. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Protected it from what? I asked. From you, she said, meeting my eyes for the first time without a smile. You were unstable. You obsessed over things. You fixated on that crime like it was personal. That doesn't mean. I knew people would believe it, Lydia interrupted. That's the point. The room went very still. Mom sank into a chair, like her legs could no longer hold her. You forged a confession? Lydia's voice wavered now, not with regret, but with fear. I added context. I told a story that made sense. A lie, I said. A necessary one, she shot back. If people think you're unwell, they won't question why I manage things. Remind decisions. Keep you away. Mom looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. "You tried to destroy your sister." Lydia scoffed. "I tried to protect what's mine. That was it. Not Mom. Not family. Not truth. Possession." I stood up slowly. "I've already contacted a lawyer," I said. "And the platform hosting the diary. They're reviewing it as stolen property and falsified material." Lydia's face drained of color. "You wouldn't." "I already did," I said. She turned to Mom. "You're going to let her do this?" Mom didn't answer right away. She looked tired. Older. Wounded in a way I couldn't fix. "I raised you both," Mom said finally. "But I won't protect lies. Especially ones this cruel." Lydia's eyes filled not with tears, but with rage. "You're choosing her." "I'm choosing the truth," Mom said. Lydia grabbed her purse and stormed out, the front door slamming hard enough to rattle the windows. The house went quiet again, but this time it felt different, like a storm had finally broken. The fallout came fast. Within 48 hours, the diary listing was taken down. The seller sent an apology, citing new evidence and legal concerns. The forum posts disappeared one by one. A local journalist who'd been tipped off quietly backed away when confronted with documentation. Lydia didn't stop there. She called relatives, old neighbors, anyone who would listen. She said I was manipulating Mom, that I'd always been jealous, that I was trying to rewrite the past. But something had shifted. People asked questions now. Why had Lydia kept the diary so long? Why had the confession appeared so late? Why did the handwriting look off? The lawyer confirmed what we already knew: fabrication, defamation, intent. We didn't press criminal charges. Not because Lydia didn't deserve consequences, but because Mom couldn't bear it. Instead, boundaries were drawn. Lydia was removed from managing Mom's affairs. The will was updated with a neutral executor. And for the first time in decades, Lydia lost control of the story. She stopped calling, stopped texting. I heard through a cousin that she'd moved further away, that she told people she'd been betrayed. I didn't correct the record. I didn't need to. Healing didn't come all at once. Some nights, I still woke up with the echo of those fake pages in my head. Some mornings, I still checked my phone with a flicker of dread. But slowly, life reclaimed its shape. I returned to work. I cooked dinners without burning them. I laughed at Caleb's terrible jokes. Mark kissed my cheek the same way he always did, steady, grounding. And my mother, she apologized. Not with excuses, just with truth. "I should have protected you," she said one afternoon, holding my hand across the kitchen table. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." I squeezed her fingers. "You see it now." That was enough. Because the hardest part wasn't being lied about. It was being almost erased by someone who shared my blood. And surviving that taught me something important. The truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be documented, steady, and patient. The quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was the kind of quiet that settles after something heavy has been moved, after furniture is rearranged, and the room finally breathes again. For weeks, my mother's house felt lighter, even though nothing physical had changed. Same curtains. Same ticking clock above the sink. Same faint smell of lavender cleaner that Mom had used for as long as I could remember. But Lydia's presence was gone. Not just from the house, but from the rhythm of our lives. Mom no longer flinched when her phone rang. She slept better. She stopped apologizing every time she talked about money or decisions, like she was bracing for an argument that never came. The tension she'd carried in her shoulders for years slowly softened. As for me, the days became quieter in a different way. At work, people stopped whispering. The awkward looks faded. The diary became old news, replaced by whatever scandal came next, which is how the world works. It moves on, whether you're ready or not. Still, the damage lingered in subtler ways. One afternoon, I was cleaning out a drawer in my home office when I found an old spiral notebook. Not the diary, but another relic from that time. I flipped through it absently and then froze. There it was again. My handwriting. But this time, it was real. Messy. Inconsistent. Honest. I sat down on the floor and let myself read, not the lies someone else had written, but the girl I used to be. A girl who felt unheard. a girl who wrote to survive. And that's when I understood something that had been sitting quietly in the back of my mind for weeks. Lydia hadn't just stolen my diary. She had been trying to steal my narrative for most of my life. Even before the forgery. Even before the inheritance. She had always spoken for me, interpreting my silence as weakness, my boundaries as guilt, my distance as proof of something being wrong with me. And I had let her. Not because I agreed with her version of me, but because it was easier than fighting. That realization hurt more than I expected. The lawyer called 2 weeks later. "Your sister's attorney reached out," he said. "They want to settle." Quietly. I closed my eyes. "What does that mean?" "No admission of guilt," he explained, but a formal statement retracting the authenticity of the diary pages. "And a cease and desist agreement." "And the estate?" I asked. He paused. "Your mother's executor is now independent. Equal distribution. Clear terms." I exhaled slowly. "Okay." When I told Mom, she nodded. "I don't want to punish her," she said softly. "But I won't reward what she did either." That was the balance she had always struggled to find. Fairness without denial. We never spoke Lydia's name much after that. Not because it was forbidden, but because it lost its power. She became a fact of the past, not a presence in the room. On my 43rd birthday, Mom mailed me a small package. Inside was a new diary. Not maroon. Not locked. Just a simple leather-bound notebook, blank and patient. The note inside was short. "For your own words. Only yours." I cried then. Quietly. The kind of tears that come not from pain, but from being finally seen. Months passed. Life filled in the spaces where fear used to sit. I started writing again. Not every day, not obsessively. Just when something needed somewhere to land. I wrote about Mark's habit of humming when he was nervous. About Caleb growing taller, his voice cracking mid-sentence. About forgiveness, not as a gift you give someone else, but as a decision to stop carrying their weight. One evening, while washing dishes, Mark asked, "Do you ever miss her?" I knew who he meant. I considered the question honestly. "I miss the sister I thought I had," I said. "Not the one she chose to be." He nodded, accepting that without trying to fix it. That night, I checked my email and found a message from the seller, the same one who had first refused to take the listing down. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry again," he wrote. I had no idea how much harm that item could cause. "I've changed how I handle personal materials." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied with a simple thank you. Because closure doesn't always look like justice served with a gavel. Sometimes it looks like harm interrupted. The last time I heard about Lydia was through a distant relative. She told them she was starting fresh. That she'd been misunderstood. That family had turned against her. I didn't correct the story. I didn't need to. Because the people who mattered had seen the truth. And more importantly, I had reclaimed my own voice. There's a strange thing that happens when your past is rewritten without your consent. You either spend the rest of your life trying to erase the lie, or you stand firm in the truth and let time do the rest. I chose the second. And here's what I've learned. Not everyone who hurts you does it loudly. Some people do it carefully, quietly, with paperwork and stories and half-truths designed to look believable. But the truth has a texture. It holds up under light. And when you stop running from it, when you document it, protect it, and speak it calmly, it becomes stronger than any lie ever written in your name. When I think back on everything now, it isn't the fear that stays with me. It's the moment I realized I didn't have to keep defending my silence. For years, I thought staying quiet made me safe. That if I didn't argue, didn't accuse, didn't demand, things would eventually settle on their own. But silence doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes, it just gives someone else room to speak for you. Losing my diary hurt, not because of the pages, but because of what they represented. My younger self had trusted that her words would stay hers. That trust was broken. But something stronger replaced it. Clarity. I learned that the truth doesn't need to be dramatic to be powerful. It doesn't need raised voices or public revenge. It just needs to be steady, documented, and protected by boundaries. And I learned something else too about family. Sharing blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. But choosing honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, can heal things silence never could. Today, my life is quieter. Not because there are no conflicts, but because I no longer let other people define who I am. I write when I need to. I speak when it matters. And I walk away when someone insists on turning my life into a story that isn't mine. So I want to ask you something. If someone tried to rewrite your past, would you stay silent to keep the peace? Or would you stand calmly in your truth and let it speak for itself? If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to hear more real-life stories about family, betrayal, and quiet strength, consider subscribing. Thank you for listening.